hit the record button, and welcome everybody to this webinar on preventing financial fraud. Just a few introductions first. If you don't know me, I know lots of the faces here, but there are some people I don't know. My name is Helen, and I'm one of the co-founders of Freiheit Care, who offer in-home care to seniors and also children, predominantly in Ontario and Quebec. But one of the other things that we offer at Freiheit Care is webinars like this one to actually help educate and encourage all of us, and with interesting topics such as how to prevent financial fraud. And I'm really excited by this one. It's been on my heart to do this for a long time, as I'm aware of people who have been sadly impacted by this. And sometimes they seem really obvious, and we know it's a fraud, and sometimes they're just so subtle and it's easy to fall for it. So I'm delighted to have Dave and Rebecca with us today, and I'm going to actually have to ask you to unmute because I muted you. Perfect. And I've had the privilege of getting to know Dave and Rebecca, particularly over the last year. I used to listen to them on their radio. They have a radio show on CHRI. And then I got to know them more personally. I meet with Rebecca on a Monday morning for prayer, and Dave actually did our mortgage for us. So definitely recommend him for financial matters as well. But they are the owners and founders of More Than Enough Financial, and have lots of information. They do a lot of coaching of people and real experts in matters of finances. So I'm going to hand this over to them in 30 seconds. I just want to let everyone know it is being recorded, and that's for people who weren't able to make it during this time slot, so we can actually put it online. But it is just going to be Dave and Rebecca who are on video. And when we do the question and answer time, I will pause the recording, so you don't need to worry about that. If you want to ask any questions, feel free to put them in the chat whenever you think of them, so you don't forget them, but we'll also open it up later on as well. And if there's a question you want to ask, but you don't want other people to know you're asking that question, you can also send me a private message as well. So just on the, when it says to, just scroll that down and you can pick my name, which is Helen Reimer, and you can send me a private message. So that's all for housekeeping. You are all on mute for now, but when we get to questions, you can unmute yourself as well. So Dave and Rebecca, over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Helen. We really appreciate the opportunity. It is actually something that you mentioned. It's something that's close to your heart. This whole area is something that I run across through the mortgage practice more times than I like to. And every time it happens, it bothers me for days and weeks, and because there's just it's just senseless. And so I'm going to start by saying there's a real passion here today to just help you maybe learn some things that you can use as identifiers to go, I'm going to say, arm you with the equipment that you need to identify some of these things around fraud. And as Helen mentioned, we own a company called More Than Enough, and our passion really is getting into that day-to-day financial piece with families across Canada to help them just navigate all of the different areas around finances that are so, I'm going to say, a little bit complicated, but also just the day-to-day stuff. So thank you so much for having us. And as Helen said, if you have any questions in terms of you want to get them into the chat box, that's a great way. If you need to do the chat box, it's right in the middle of your screen. You'll see a little bubble there. So just hit the chat box and start typing. And of course, we're happy to hang around and answer any questions at the end. Rebecca.
So I do want to put a couple qualifiers in. I always cringe when someone calls me an expert, because I certainly don't feel like an expert. We are not financial advisors, so we don't invest your money. People normally don't call us like, we're going to recommend in a few minutes, and I sent Helen some phone numbers for the Canadian, the Competition Bureau, sorry, and there's another one. So there are places that are the place to go when you've gotten scammed or you think you're getting scammed, and they have an open-handed please report when you're getting scammed. The Canadian government really wants to know, because unless we report it, they don't know what average Canadians are getting in trouble. I want to say that, so just so you have context, we've been around since about 2008 as a financial coaching company. Dave's been a mortgage agent for a number of years. We have a small tax department. So when we're going to talk about CRA fraud in a little bit, we've come across that in our office, as Dave said, in the mortgages as well. I want to say to you, I'm 52 years old, and I realize my son says and reminds me in 3 years, I'll be able to get the seniors discount at his store. So, I'm very excited about that. But I never, as you can probably all experience, I've never imagined I'd be this close to that age. You will go online, if you did, and you would Google fraudsters and scams, and you'd see that the senior population of Canada is a huge target market, because traditionally you guys all, or we, let's say our generations, have more money than the younger ones, usually. So there's a great target market for you guys. But I do want to say, you don't have to be proud of that fact, or, like, oh, I'm a senior, I get targeted, or, oh man, I'm a senior and I'm not, we're not doing so well in the fraud department. Everybody's getting targeted. Seniors, young people. I sometimes send my children from 24 to 10, and I send my kids these emails that I get. Is this fraud? Like, it's looking really, it's like, it looks like it's from RBC, like the Royal Bank of Canada. And they're like, Mom, don't touch it. So I rely on my children sometimes to give me some wisdom, and of course, David too. But we're going to get to that in a minute about how important that is. Every day we get emails. Every day I'm starting to get text messages. There's a name for that, for fraud. Press on this link, and it's very annoying. And it also is annoying because we were just talking about it with Helen before we started. They have local numbers. So you get a phone message, and for us, it's 774. That's the area we live in, 613-774. You think your friend's calling, and they actually have access now, a local number, so that when they're calling, it looks like they're familiar, and they're not. So there's a lot of stuff happening with this in our country. Fraudsters are real. I actually get really upset when I started doing more reading on this and research and hearing people's stories. I don't get it. Like, it's just mean. It's just, I know money and greed are the driving force to get our money, but it's just mean. It's unkind. It's really not Canadian either. Like, if you think about it, we're supposed to be peacekeepers, and we're like always saying sorry. It's very un-Canadian to be a scammer. We're going to get it on the phone. We're going to get it online. We're going to get it in the mail. We'll get it in person. Maybe someone's going to try and sell you something door to door when it's not COVID. There's all kinds of ways. As much as there's imagination, there's a way to get us. In February 2020, CTV wrote an article and did a news story saying that Canadians lost over $130 million to scammers in 2019. And very fraudulent activity. If you want the article, I can send it to Helen later and you can read up on it. But there's also more, they have more articles since then about what's happened in COVID, and it's still alive and well in COVID. So how do we get scammed?
So I'm going to jump in here and do that. And again, just by way of a little bit of, let's set the stage. We want you to be cautious, and that's one of the goals for us today. We want you to be aware. That's one of the goals for us today, for Reb and I. But we don't want you to be afraid. To be honest, the fear factor is one of the things that fraudsters actually prey on. And so when we're talking today, our hope is, and this is why it's so important, if you've got questions or you've got, you want to put in, ask us, today is a day of just, hey, how do I become more aware? And as I said, we all need to be cautious, but we don't need to be afraid. So in light of that, then we're going to highlight, Reb and I are just going to go down basically a list of, here are some of the ways that fraud or scams happen. And if you didn't catch what Reb said a minute ago, and oh, by the way, I call her Reb, not Rebecca, just so you know, I call her Reb, that's short form for Rebecca. So what she said is so important, that the creativity that scammers have, I mean, I don't know how they come up with these things, and to spend that much time trying to think up a fraud or scam, you'd think they would be a lot more productive with their time, because some of them are quite sophisticated. That they really do, as good as and as aware as you may be, you're like, I did not know that was a fraud. So there are some very sophisticated fraudsters, and I want to speak to that, say, just because you have been duped or you do get duped, don't take that on yourself. They're very sophisticated and often, and they allow, they trick people. That's what they do. They spend a lot of time doing that. So one of the top thing on the list is the subscription-based scammer. And this is somebody who offers you, say, a sample product. And they say, hey, no obligation, no strings attached, in quotes, but we're going to send you a free sample of whatever it is. But to get that free sample, you have to send us your credit card number. We won't charge you, but you have to send us your credit card number and we'll send you your free sample. That is the entranceway to a scam of being charged more and more on your credit card and not getting the product that maybe you want to get. So that's subscription. That's again, you actually do sign up. You actually do send them your information. So in that way, there's no deception here. It's just simply they send you the first one and they don't send you the rest whenever, and they continue to charge you. So that's a subscription-based fraud, and be very careful with subscriptions. Anything that you sign up that says it's a free offer, and I saw in the chat box just as we were getting started that Larry said, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. Larry, that's probably one of the best pieces of advice you're gonna have today as well, is yes, if it sounds too good to be true, why would they send us this stuff? There it is. The second one is in my world on the mortgage side, and that is identity theft. There's an awful lot of information that is out there already on you. If you didn't know that, guess what? It's already out there on you. And there are people out there that essentially pretend to be you, and then they will do all kinds of things, everything from obtaining a mortgage on the house that you live in, straight on through to kind of mixing with some of the other fraud activities that we're going to talk about. So, in light of that, and we'll talk a little bit about what you can do to avoid these frauds a little bit later. So we'll just leave that for now. So identity theft is one of them, and it's one of the big ones for sure.
So there's something called, and a lot of this list we did get from this little black book that Helen's put in your chat. It's called The Little Black Book of Scams. It's really great. You can actually go and get it by downloaded email for free. So if you don't know how to do that, then like I rely on my children for all things technical, I call them. So, but one of the things that's talked about, and I've seen it in my own email related, is called the CEO scam. So if somebody's in the accounting business or in a finance office, it'll look like their CEO is asking for money. And that, like, you guys, this is like tricky stuff, and they're smart. The other thing is, sometimes, I don't know if you guys have ever got this one, like somebody in India or Africa or somewhere is starving and their children are dying, and please send me money. You know, you're going to get, or they offer you an investment in another nation. But Okay, this is one tip. I think we're going to be unfolding some of them. If there's a spelling mistake, just delete it. If there's grammar mistakes, delete it. It's not been translated properly from their original language. So don't even go any further if you know there's a spelling mistake or grammar it's a very
I love those teachers, those retired teachers, because I get those back that say, Dave, spelling's terrible. Where did you go to school?
Unless it's from him, right? If David often sends you poorly written, then
no, it's still a scam. I'm telling you, somebody stole my identity and now they're scamming you. So if it's bad grammar, I've been corrected. It's all good. But I love those ones, and I get those inquiries quite a bit. Is Dave? This seems weird. And look, there's like 3 spelling mistakes. In the mortgage industry, that's actually how we catch fraudsters, is by the spelling. So it's actually a very neat little way that you can catch it and just delete it and say, hey, don't worry about it.
So there's also health and medical scams when someone's telling you they've got the miracle cure. As Larry already pointed out, his good advice from his mom, if it's too good to be true, it likely is. That's sometimes the other thing that I have to remind myself, even when I'm going through Instagram or any social media sites and there's ads for something, would I have bought it otherwise? Or, if you want cream, you're going to go to the store and get the cream, or you're going to call your kids and they're going to go get the cream for you. We don't need to, fall into those things, but even I do. And I have. So, those are the health and medical scams. There's a romance scam, and it can happen through dating sites. It appeals to the lonely heart. We actually have a client who this happened twice to, and she was living with her friend and she didn't know it, but she had to remortgage because she had paid all this money to this guy, and it happened twice. So that was a hard story. So David had to help.
So if he's too good to be true, he probably is.
If he's asking you for money or she's asking you for money, run. Yeah. And as we say, we're going to say this a couple times, have a trusted advisor, have someone in your life who you trust. So there are business scams. There's phishing and smishing scams. They say the smishing one is the text message that I'm getting more and more often. Phishing is emails. Then there are the tax scams. And I'll just say this because you and I have all experienced the CRA letter, even emails and phone calls. You're going to prison, you owe CRA money, and you're going to prison. And when it first started, it scared a lot of us because, you can think logically this is probably a scam, but when they talk about imprisonment and the police coming, you're like, but this is the time. And we did learn this quite quickly. The police were on it. The Canadian government was on it. There's all kinds of messages out there. Don't fall for that one. This is, again, find your trusted advisor. If you question it, don't be embarrassed that you don't know, that you can't figure it out and you're troubled. Call the one you trust. Maybe it's your kids. Maybe it is an advisor in your life. Or like at our office, sometimes people call Dave. This doesn't sound right. And it's just being able to. So don't let your shame or embarrassment about it keep you from getting to the bottom of it, because the scammers want us to feel shame and embarrassed and keep it secret. That's how they feed on us. Secrecy. Mm-hmm. The longer we keep it secret, like this woman who had this romance, she kept it so secret, and it wasn't healthy.
And that's again, some of the ploys and some of the key words to pick up on is, when you feel a little embarrassed or you feel a little unsure sharing it with your kids or with that trusted advisor, then that, wait a minute, that's your little, your gut telling you, wait a minute, there's something not right here. I need to step into that and actually, bring someone else who I trust into this question. So trust your gut. When you feel that, trust your gut. Because as we said, some of these scams look legitimate. They're very sophisticated, and they are designed to fool you. So door-to-door scams. We've all lived in the world where it was kind of normal to have some door-to-door salesmen coming by and for whatever reason selling different products. That still happens. A funny little story. I don't know if you heard it a few years ago. Oh, I probably shouldn't tell this one. So I'm not gonna. So too
we
bad.
couldn't get the information to back it up, but
Yeah.
But it goes with the purchase of merchandise scam, which you can talk about because that was me.
Yeah. So here's my lovely wife Rebecca, and she's shopping for our kids for a birthday present online. Christmas present. Sorry,
Actually, no. This one showed up in Instagram.
Oh, it did.
Facebook, yes.
So it showed up as an advertisement that came to her saying, look at, for all of this, there's like these huge packages of Lego that you can buy for your kids for the small sum of $150. And
it was like a huge castle. Like it looked huge. You're like, wow, like a Lego's expensive.
4,000 pieces of Lego, right? Like that was the advertisement. So needless to say, we did get something in the mail.
It was good and the kids did it, but the pieces were like 4,000 of pieces that big. It was wild. And the comments, the reviews were positive because they planted these positive reviews.
So we did do some due diligence.
Yeah.
We went online, we looked at it, and we looked, and I won't blame her totally because we did it together. But the reality was that we went, oh my, when we got the product, we looked at it and said, this was not as advertised. This just wasn't as advertised, right? So that's sometimes in these purchase of merchandise scams. It's not that you don't get the product, because sometimes you get the product, you just don't quite get what is advertised. And then how do you go back on it? Again, that's the scam. We paid $120. It probably cost them about $3 for that stuff.
Maybe.
Whatever it is.
Maybe.
I'm going to exaggerate on the other side.
You just swallow it and move on. In that case,
Yeah.
I just swallowed it, moved on. The kids used it and still are using it. It's fine.
Yeah. So so that's the purchase of merchandise when I'm buying something. And so be especially wary of advertising that comes into you that promises you exactly what you need. Do a little due diligence there and do it. Now, the sale of merchandise is the other side of the equation. I have something that I'm going to sell, and I put it on, say, a Kijiji or a Used Ottawa or a Facebook Marketplace, and it's not there for 30 seconds, and I already get a response. Yeah, and it looks legitimate. If you get a response within 30 seconds, due diligence, pause, go, don't get too excited yet. That's the first indicator that it is actually a scam. And then and we'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm going to share that story with my sister right now. But as a seller, you need to be as aware of who you're purchased or who's purchasing for you. So that's just that awareness for you to know that, hey, not everybody who says they want to buy my stuff actually does. They just simply want to take my stuff. And here's a quick story with my sister. She had a camera she wanted to sell, and everything legit. They sent it. She actually took the package, wrapped it all up, and was at the post office. And the person at the post office went, "This seems a little bit weird." There was,
because you're missing a piece to that story, because what they get you to do is they say, "We've got our money in PayPal. You send us the tracking number and we will release the money." So she gets to the post office.
And again, the postal worker who was there sees it and goes, "I'm not sure this isn't right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually give you the tracking number, and I'm going to hold the package. I'm not going to send it out. And then you tell me when I should send it out when you get your money." So they did that. She sent that, and of course she didn't get the money, and they went back and forth for a couple hours, and then she went back to the post office and collected her package. So everything looked that would make sense. Why would somebody send you money if they weren't sure that the package was being shipped to them? Doesn't that make sense? Again, in all of this transaction, the money never ever got sent, and happily my sister had a very astute postal worker who interceded there. So
yeah. So we're at 128, but
sure.
I'm going to tell one more story because this involves my cousin, who I'm younger than a lot of my cousins are. I came a bit later to my mom. he actually was part of, I wish I could, well, maybe you can, I don't know if you can see it. There he is. His name's Graham. I can say this publicly because this is an article from the Calgary Herald in 2015. His dad sat down with him one day and told him about a $50,000 investment he was going to make. And all, as a chartered accountant, all his spidey senses went active, and he got involved with bringing down this organization. I emailed him because he lives in Australia right now, and he sent me some information about it and all of that. It was the biggest Ponzi scheme in Canadian history, over $200 million. The perpetrators ultimately went to prison, but he says for maddeningly short periods of time, despite the thousands of people that they hurt. And when his dad did it, they got the money back. And the reason they got the money back was because Graham and his brother harassed this organization until they gave it back, because they didn't want negative press. Him and his brother actually went to their investor meetings in these public places and handed out brochures telling everybody they were fraudsters. They got thrown out. So my cousin was a bit obsessed at the time because he just felt the injustice of it. But he was a part of bringing these guys down. But sadly, there was 3,000 victims. One took her life because she had lost so much money. It's just these are hard stories, and as you know, that's why we're all here together today. So a little bit later for this, we can share some of his tips that he sent me as part of. So if you want some of that, we can talk about that a bit later. Mm-hmm. But we're going to just give you an overview of some little tips before we break for the question and answer time. What we think could help you. Now, because there's another part that we haven't talked about, and it has to do with charitable giving. So I have a friend whose dad, but he also he doesn't always remember things. So charities call him, and my friend will get everything cleaned up in his accounts, on his visa, cancel all the giving. That was a hard story because, you know, if you want to give, just call the charity you want to give to. But folks are calling him, and then so my friend has spent much time educating his dad and doing things like putting messages on the phone. Do not give anyone your credit card. If that's what it takes, write that message on the phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Larry just mentioned this too, on that whole scamming, and that can happen again a little bit innocuously, but there's a couple of great documentaries on scams. I know one is on Netflix, and Larry mentioned that one. But the reality is one of the key principles of avoiding scam is that you are the one who initiates the engagement. So if somebody calls you, one of the key things you can say is, thank you for the information. Can you please send me something in the mail? Or I'll look at this with my trusted advisor. Again, that we like that word, trusted advisor, because guess what? Everyone needs to have 1, 2, or 3 maybe trusted advisors, depending on where it is. So just want to again give you that as a tool for you. Don't you initiate. If you want to do something, then you initiate, and you do some due diligence ahead of time. Talk to, again, if it's bring other people, a trusted advisor, a family member, someone who you know to say, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. And for some people that feels like, well, I don't want to tell everybody everywhere I'm spending every dollar that I have. If that person cares, and it's just a matter of saying, is this a scam? Is this somewhere where the money needs to go so that I can get what I actually intend to get? So it is really just help for that. So knowledge is power, and that's really key. If you don't know, if it's an investment that looks so confusing, even a small one, then stop. Again, if you can't understand it, if there's knowledge is power here, right? We have a little acrostic that we say often, FACE, face your finances. Financial awareness creates empowerment. And maybe Helen, you can put that into the chat box, FACE, financial awareness creates empowerment. It's good that you look at your bank account once, twice, maybe even 3 times a week, just to see if there's something that's going on in there that you don't recognize. And whether that's the Visa card or whether that's the bank account, look in your bank account and say, is it all right? Get familiar with what the normal is for you, so that you can identify. We have all, and I think everybody in this room, if you haven't experienced some card or expense going on your credit card that was not yours, well, you're very lucky, because I mean, I had a credit card that every 6 months somebody was putting another charge on it, and we must have changed the card 5 or 6 times over that course of that time. I don't know where they get the number. I don't know why me. Didn't matter. I would monitor it. I would see that's not my charge. And then I would initiate the call to the credit card company with the number that's on the back of the credit card. And this is part of that whole awareness is, don't take their word for it. Don't take the number off the email or whatever communication that they've come into you. If the communication has come into you, don't take that number. Look at the back of the credit card and find out what the number's on the credit card. Ask your trusted advisor to be able to say, hey, there's something weird about this. I need to call my bank, whatever number that is. In this post-COVID, it's not as great. We don't have relationship with our bank people, but get relationship with the people in the bank so that you can say, hey, I want to talk to Rebecca, because that's the person I know at the bank and I trust her, right? So some of those things in terms of financial awareness creates empowerment. You become empowered to be able to control the money that comes into your bank account, the money that's going out of your bank account, what's going on there. Again, you do not need to be afraid. Again, when you feel afraid or you feel then you know that there's something going on there that maybe we need to bring, again, that trusted person into this conversation so that you can, first of all, get rid of the fear. And second of all, have somebody from the outside looking at it. We won't talk about power of attorneys and estate planning today, but that may be a place to turn to. If you have a trusted advisor who is part of your estate planning, that's a great person to turn to in terms of your trusted advisor, because they're obviously going to be working with you in these end of life situations.
And Deborah says that her financial institution offers her an option to get a daily email with her balance, so she can check it, and she deletes it every day, but at least then she has a handle of what's going on. And often our credit card and banking institutions, this is why it's so good to call your bank or say, you know what, give me your, so they're calling and saying someone's put a charge on your Visa, then you say, could I have your client, your number, because everybody has a number at the bank, right? So those who are calling you, could I have your name, could I have your phone number, could I have your number? And if they hang up, then you kind of know it's been a scam. But if it's to you, then you say, I feel more comfortable, I'm going to call the number on the card and I'm going to talk to them to make sure this is legitimate. If they're really with the bank, they will totally understand why you're doing it and just do it. That's a really helpful thing.
No, I gotta say, I was checking Lauren's comment there. So way to go, Lauren.
Lauren, yeah.
That is Lauren. So yeah. If you think you're on the phone with a scammer, ask as many questions as you want. Get them to think about their kids. I love doing this when I get scammers and I know it's a scam. I start talking about, well, I think I should have my lawyer call you. What's your name and your badge number? And you can have a little bit of fun if you have the time. 2 things happen. One is when they get uncomfortable, they just simply hang up on you. Don't get offended on that. You've won. Count that as a victory. Yay, right? When they hang up on you. And on the other side is that, you know, if you see a scammer and you're like, just hang up. Don't even, you know, again, you do not need to apologize. I mean, if you don't want to be totally rude, but I tell people, just be rude, just hang up, because the reality is you don't want to spend more time just dealing with a scammer. So.
I'm just going to mention, I think Helen put it at the very beginning, there's the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center and there's the Competition Bureau. There's the Better Business Bureau of Canada. Like my cousin recommends, when you're investing in a business, look at the business, not the bottom line, and call the Better Business Bureau. He says it's not foolproof. Like they can even get a bit scammed on the legitimacy of a company, but at least it's a starting place and you can have that conversation with them over there. So here's just, I'm just going to go for a couple minutes or maybe 1 minute, and I'll say these fast, and then we can have some question and answer if you have any questions. Don't have a credit card if you don't need one. Then you're not going to be tempted to put money on there. And
along with that, I'll just throw in, try and keep your finances simple. One bank account that everything goes through. If you've got 10 bank accounts, that's confusing. There's more a chance for you to miss something. Just keep it simple. One bank account, and if you don't need a card, then don't have one.
Have a sign on your phone to remind you, I am not giving my credit card to anyone. I am not making a purchase. You have to do things. You don't have to be embarrassed that you have to have those, but if that's what you need, then do it. There's like, what do you got to lose? You got everything to save by just putting a little sign on, or say, call my trusted advisor, or, you know, if it's your son, call, you know, for me, it would be call Dave, ask Dave before you make a purchase. We have a thing in our coaching, a 24-hour rule. You know, you can easily say to the scammers, I'm just not going to make a decision because I have a 24-hour rule. You know, they'll hang up on you. You know, I can't give you any money because I have a 24-hour rule about money. You just use it as an excuse. Even if you have that rule yourself,
you use that as an excuse? Well, I do that all the time. It's like, no, 24 hours, I have to check with Rebecca. Okay.
So there's just, you know, you can be rude, you know, if you want to. I mean, I know the other person on the end of the line is maybe just trying to make a living, but they're possibly doing it just fraudulently. So just hang up. Don't feel bad about it. My mom would always, she passed away a couple of years ago. She lived till 94. She'd just hang up on people. Like she just couldn't, she was past tolerating all that stuff. You know, look at your bank statements. We've always said, our friend who is dealing with his dad and the charitable giving said, just don't have a lot of cash in your checking account either. So that might be a little more challenging for you, but there's ways you can figure that stuff out. And again, just keep asking questions, ask questions, ask them about their life story. If you know, if I'm that kind of person, why are you doing this? Why are you like, anyway, I get lots of those hang-ups for when I ask those questions. But
and then just 2 seconds here before we go to some questions and answer Q&A. So feel free to have those in your head and your thought, and we'll unmute in a minute or throw it into the chat box. But when it comes to large investments, large sum of money, you know, the first one is let's just commit with that trusted advisor that you will not spend a certain amount of money on any kind of expense without first checking with them. I had another client who, in the end, the bank, what they'd done is they communicated to the bank that there would only any transfer that the gentleman made that was over $100, the bank would have to check with the trusted advisor. So it was a quick phone call. He's doing this. They're buying a car, whatever it is. And that was a great, and again, that was a service that the bank would say, sorry, we can't release funds unless we have a secondary authorization. And so a dual authorization, especially for large purchases or large investments that are there. So I think we'll stop there and just open it up. Helen, I don't know if you can unmute everybody or